Hello everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. The roar of four Wright Cyclone engines fills the cabin. The sound isn't just noise, it's survival. Every rotation of those propellers means the men aboard Heavenly Body are still alive. Outside, the world is a storm of black smoke and shrapnel. German 88mm shells burst in patterns so precise they seem almost intelligent, each one trying to guess where the bombers will be 3 seconds from now. The men are silent, focused. Sweat freezes on their faces despite the temperature being 40 below zero. The oxygen masks crackle with each breath. Somewhere in the nose, Bombardier Lieutenant Jack Andrews peers through the Norden bomb site, his gloved hands trembling. Below him lies Bremen, a patchwork of factories, rail yards, and steel foundries turning out weapons for the Reich. "Target in sight," Andrews whispers. The intercom comes alive. "Roger that." "Bomb bay doors, open!" Metal creaks. A deep mechanical groan rolls through the fuselage as the bay doors drop open to the icy wind. For a moment, the entire aircraft feels suspended between heaven and hell. Then, flak!
2 o'clock.
A shell explodes so close that it lifts the bomber sideways. Shards of metal rip through the right wing, and a geyser of smoke trails behind. The pilot, Captain Bill Richards, fights the controls. The plane vibrates like it's being torn apart. "Hold her steady," he shouts. Andrews drops the bombs. A long, heavy silence follows. Then far below, a string of explosions blossoms across the German city. Mission complete. But the sky doesn't let them go that easily. 3 Messerschmitt Bf-109s dive out of the sun, their engines screaming. "Bandits, 3 o'clock high!" The top turret gunner yells. The air fills with the savage chatter of 50-caliber guns. Brass shells rain onto the floor like golden hail. A burst from one of the German fighters slashes across the fuselage, tearing through the waist gunner's position. The man drops to his knees, blood seeping through his flight jacket. The crew's medic rushes to his side, pressing a cloth to the wound, whispering, "Stay with me, kid. Just stay with me." For 5 eternal minutes, the sky is chaos. Planes burning, parachutes blooming, voices screaming over the radio. Then suddenly, it's quiet again, except for the rumble of the remaining engines. Heavenly Body is still flying. Barely. 2 engines sputter. Fuel leaks from both wings, and hydraulic pressure is nearly gone. The compass spins wildly, but Captain Richards refuses to turn back over enemy territory. "We're not dying over Germany," he mutters. The crew jettisons everything not bolted down, guns, ammo, even the navigator's chair. The lighter the plane, the better their odds. Slowly, agonizingly, they inch toward the North Sea. Clouds swallow the horizon, and the bomber groans as if it knows how close it is to death. Inside the radio compartment, Sergeant Frank Dalton taps out a distress signal. His fingers are numb, but he doesn't stop. "Mayday, mayday, B-17 returning from Bremen. Critical damage. 2 engines down. Request escort over channel." No reply. The men say nothing. The only sound is the labored breathing through their oxygen masks and the constant ticking of the altimeter as they lose altitude. 15,000 feet. 12,000. 10,000. Then at last a voice crackles through. "Copy that, Heavenly Body. RAF Spitfires inbound. Hold your course." Relief floods the cabin. Not joy, just relief. When the coastline of England finally appears beneath them, every man stares in silence. They've made it. The bomber lands hard, one wheel collapsing on impact. Sparks shower across the runway. Fire crews rush forward, foam cannons ready. When the engines finally die, the men sit in the wreckage, stunned. The ground crew gathers around the aircraft. The fuselage is riddled with over 600 holes. A shell has passed through the bomb bay without detonating. The tail section is held together by a single twisted beam. Yet somehow all 10 men have survived. One of the mechanics, a young corporal named Ray Murphy, runs his hand over the shredded aluminum skin and whispers, "I don't understand how this thing stayed in the air." The pilot hears him. "You can thank the guy who designed her," Richard says, stepping down from the cockpit. "Some engineer back in Seattle. Name's Ed Wells. At that moment, no one in that airfield knows that Ed Wells isn't a general or a commander or even a soldier. He's a quiet man in his 30s, working behind a drafting table at Boeing. And while bombers, like Heavenly Body, are earning glory in the skies, Wells is fighting his own war, a war of design, innovation, and defiance against the impossible. Because years earlier, when the B-17 was still just an experimental project, most experts at the U.S. Army Air Corps thought his ideas were insane. Armor plating would make it too heavy, they said. Redundant systems would waste money. Self-sealing fuel tanks? Overcomplicated nonsense. But Ed Wells believed something different. He believed a plane could be more than metal. It could be a survivor. The smell of oil, steel, and ambition hangs thick in the air. Sparks fly from welding torches. Sheets of aluminum ring under the hammer strikes of men building the future of flight. But at the far end of the assembly floor, away from the noise and boasting, one man sits hunched over a drafting table, a young engineer with restless eyes and ink-stained hands. His name is Edward Curtis Wells. Most people call him Ed. He's been at Boeing for only a few years, but already his designs are starting to turn heads. He's quiet, analytical, almost shy, yet his mind burns with visions far bolder than those of the senior engineers who surround him. That morning, as the others focus on building light, fast bombers, Ed sketches something heavier, stronger, a machine that could take damage and still make it home. He draws thick spars across the wings, compartmentalized fuel tanks, reinforced landing gear, and dual control systems. He doesn't call it innovation. He calls it insurance. Too heavy, says one supervisor, glancing over his shoulder. You'll never get that thing off the ground. Wells doesn't argue. He just nods and keeps drawing, because deep down he knows they're wrong. At the time, the U.S. Army Air Corps wants a long-range bomber that can hit enemy targets thousands of miles away, something no one has ever built successfully. Boeing's competition, Martin and Douglas, are offering sleek, simple designs. Boeing is on the brink of financial collapse. One failed prototype could end the company, but Ed Wells has an idea that could change everything. He joins forces with Boeing's lead designer E. Gifford Emery and aerodynamicist Charles Fogarty to create a prototype unlike any other, the Model 2999. It's massive, 4 engines instead of 2, a wingspan stretching nearly 104 feet, and a sleek fuselage that looks like a spear in the wind. But it's not the shape that matters most. It's the soul of the design. The systems no one can see. Wells installs multiple electrical networks, meaning if one fails, another takes over. He reinforces the fuel tanks with layers of rubber and aluminum to seal bullet holes automatically. And he builds armor into critical sections, around the cockpit, the engines, the bomb bay, enough to save lives without grounding the aircraft. When he presents the design to the board, one executive laughs. It looks like a flying fortress. The nickname sticks. July 28, 1935, Boeing Field. The Model 299 rolls down the runway for the first time, sunlight glinting off its polished metal skin. Reporters gather. Air Corps officials watch with folded arms. Then the engines roar, and the massive aircraft rises gracefully into the air. It's faster than anyone expected. It flies higher, longer. The newspapers call it the most formidable bomber ever built, but victory turns to disaster just weeks later. During a demonstration for the military brass, the prototype crashes after takeoff. The pilot forgets to disengage a simple control lock. The plane bursts into flames. 2 men die. The press declares the project doomed. The army cancels its order. For most men, that would have been the end. But not for Ed Wells. He walks through the wreckage the next morning, staring at the twisted aluminum, smelling the burnt oil. His colleagues expect him to be broken. Instead, he pulls out his notebook. "We'll fix it," he says simply. "We'll make it better, stronger, safer." That crash would become the turning point, not the death of an idea, but its rebirth. Wells designs new safety features, automatic checklists, fail-safe control systems, cockpit alarms. The Air Corps begins to take notice again, especially after Boeing quietly builds and tests improved versions using company funds. By 1938, the modified aircraft, now designated the B-17 Flying Fortress, wins back the military's trust. The U.S. Army orders 13 for evaluation. It's not a victory yet, but it's a heartbeat. And when war finally erupts in Europe, everything Ed Wells had predicted becomes reality. By 1941, reports from the skies over Britain confirm his vision. Bombers that take hits keep flying. Fuel tanks seal themselves mid-air. Crews return from missions that should have killed them all. Word spreads through the ranks. The fortress brings you home. Even the Luftwaffe begins to respect it. German fighter pilots complain that the B-17s won't die. But for Wells, sitting in his small Boeing office surrounded by blueprints, this isn't triumph. It's personal. Every returning aircraft means 10 men are alive because of choices he made on paper years ago. Still, he knows the war has only begun, and soon his creation will face its ultimate test against the deadliest skies in Europe. The true question is not whether the B-17 can survive, but how many times it can cheat death.